Breathing in, I feel the presence in every cell of my body. Genetically, my father is present in every cell of my body. Breathing out, I smile to my father in every cell of my body. Breathing in, I invite my father to breathe in, to enjoy breathing in with me. Breathing out, I invite my father to enjoy breathing out with me. Father and son, enjoy breathing in together. Father and son, enjoy breathing out together. Breathing in, I feel so light. Father, do you feel as light as I do? Breathing out, I feel so free. Daddy, do you feel as free as I do? Breathing in, I'm aware that my mother is fully present in every cell of my body. Breathing out, I smile to my mother in every cell of my body. Breathing in, I invite my mother to enjoy breathing in with me. Breathing out, I invite my mother to enjoy breathing out with me. Mother and son enjoy breathing in together. Mother and daughter enjoy breathing in together. Mother and son enjoy breathing out together. Mother and daughter enjoy breathing out together. Breathing in, I feel so light. Mother, do you feel as light as I do? Breathing out, I feel so free. Mother, do you feel as free as I do? When I look at my hand, of course I know that this is my hand, but it is also the hand of my mother. The hand of my mother is in my hand. So when I touch my forehead with my hand, well, the hand of my mother is also touching my forehead. Even my mother is no longer alive, but she is still alive in me, and she is touching my forehead with her hand. I can be in touch with her every moment I like to. The same thing is true with all our ancestors. Our ancestors are still alive in every cell of my body, of our body. And when we breathe in and enjoy breathing in, all our ancestors enjoy breathing in with us. And if we feel free, our ancestors in us also feel free. So you are not only breathing for yourself, you are breathing for all your ancestors. Every time we make a step, solid and free, all generations of ancestors are making the same step, free and solid. Because we carry all our ancestors within us. And wherever we go, our ancestors go with us. And we carry our ancestors into the future. Dear friends, a painful feeling may come from the body, may have the roots in the body. A painful feeling may have the roots in our perception. We have to distinguish. We have to find out whether that painful feeling in us has the root in the body or in our perceptions. And we humans, we are very often victims of our wrong perceptions. We think we are perceiving things right, but most of the time, our perceptions are wrong. Suppose we look at the sun setting. We may think that the sun that we are contemplating is the sun in the present moment. But in fact, the image of the sun that we are touching is only the image of the sun of the past, 8 minutes ago. Because light needs 8 minutes to travel from the sun to the earth. And the sun that we really see in the present moment is not really the sun of the present moment. It is the sun of 8 minutes ago. So we are victims of many wrong perceptions like that, but we are often very sure of our perceptions. And to meditate is also to sit on the bank of the river perception in order to observe our perceptions. There is a river of feeling. And in the river of feeling, every drop of water is a feeling that manifests, stay for some time, and die down. And to meditate means to be there in order to observe our feelings and to see the roots of our feeling. And if we have enough mindfulness and concentration, we can identify the roots of our feeling, whether they come from the body or from our perceptions. When we live together, we should arrange so that communication be alive and possible. Because by keeping communication alive, we have a chance to correct our perception and to help the other person to correct his or her perceptions. Misunderstanding, wrong perceptions bring about suffering in a relationship between the husband and the wife, between the father and the son, the mother and daughter. We should help each other to be free from wrong perceptions, because wrong perceptions always bring about anger, irritation, hate, despair. Our perceptions have the roots in our views. It depends on our way of looking at things and listening of things that we have our perceptions. And once we got a wrong perception, we can suffer. And we can suffer for a long time. There is a gentleman who, after many years being abroad, go home and meet his son for the first time. The little boy was born during his absence. And he got the impression, the perception that it is not his own son. It may be the son of the neighbor. Because someone had told him before that his neighbor used to come very regularly during his absence. And so when he come home with that kind of perception, he was not happy. He did not look at his father, at his wife with sympathy, with love. There is one wrong perception standing in between. And he looked at the little boy with the same kind of attitude, cold, without love. But he's too proud to ask. He felt deeply hurt, but he did not have the courage to inquire about that. So he lived with that perception during 10 years, 10 long years. He suffered 10 years, and he made his wife and children and son suffer for 10 years. One day his young brother came, and when the young brother looked at the boy, he said, "Well, he looks exactly like you, my brother." And only after that he could believe that he's a legitimate, he's a real son. Since a wrong perception can be very costly. And if we are victims of one wrong perception, we can suffer very deeply and for a long time. There is a story in my, everyone in my country know that story about a lady called Nam Sương lady. His husband was drafted into the army. And his wife was pregnant when he left. But fortunately, he was able to survive the war and went home. So the young mother came to the gate of the village in order to welcome him with the little boy. So the father saw the son for the first time. And they cry in each other's arms, very happy reunion. And according to our tradition, you have to announce the good news to the ancestors. In every home there is an altar for ancestors. So everything happening in the family, you have to inform your ancestors. Each day you come to the ancestral altar in order to burn a stick of incense and to remove the dust and to send the water in the flower pot. And these 1 or 2 minutes is the time when you connect with your ancestors. So the lady had to go to the marketplace to do some shopping in order to prepare an offering to be placed on the altar, announcing that the young father, the husband, is safe. He has come home. And at that moment, the young father tried to persuade the little boy to call him daddy. And the little boy refused. No, mister, you are not my daddy. My daddy used to come every night. My mother used to talk very long with my daddy. And she cried a lot. And every time my mother sit down, my daddy sit down. Every time my mother lie down, my daddy lie down. So upon hearing that, all happiness vanished. And the husband, the young father, believed that there is someone who has intruded into the house. So he became a block of ice. That is why from the moment when the young lady came home, he did not look at her anymore. He did not talk to her anymore. He did not answer her questions anymore. She suffered very much, but she didn't know why, what happened during her absence. And after the offering has been placed on the altar, he burned incense, he do the 4 prostrations. And then instead of staying home to share a meal of reunion, he left and spent all day in a bar trying to forget his suffering by drinking alcohol, and did not come home until 2 in the morning. He was deeply hurt, and he believed that his wife had committed adultery. In fact, there's no one intruding into his home. One day the little boy came home and said, "Mommy, everyone has a daddy. Where is my daddy?" And it's too complicated to explain about war, drafting into the army and so on. So the mother pointed to her own shadow on the wall, projected by a kerosene lamp, and said, "This is your daddy. Why don't you join your palm and say, 'Hello, good evening, daddy?'" And that is what the little boy said. "Hello, daddy." And of course, she spent a lot of time talking to her own shadow. "My good husband, you have been away so long, how could I alone raise our child?" She cried. And of course, when she sit down, the shadow sit down. When she lie down, the shadow lie down. But he's caught in his wrong perception, and he suffered very deeply. And he make her and the little boy suffer also. And 3 days later, the lady could not stand it anymore. She jumped into the river and got drowned. And when he heard of that news, he came home to take care of the little boy. And that night, when he lighted up the kerosene lamp, suddenly the little boy said, "Sir, this is my daddy. And he pointed at the shadow of his father. You know, sir, you know, mister, my daddy used to come like that every night, and my mother used to talk to him and cry and so on. Now the young father understood. The wrong perception is gone, but it's too late. The mother of his son is dead. And that is why wrong perceptions are at the foundation of despair, of fear, of anger. And if we have young men in our society becoming terrorists because they have got the perceptions. And they have got informations, they have got ideas. They may be motivated by a desire to change society. But the ideas that they have got, the perception they have got, are not very helpful to them. And they have acted on the foundation of these wrong perceptions. And in order to help someone remove wrong perceptions, you cannot beat him, kill him, suppress him. You have to talk to him, to her. You have to listen to him, to her, in order to identify the perceptions. And you may like to offer information to help that person to correct his or her perceptions. And the way is to talk to each other, to listen to each other. So if the young father had come to his wife and asked, "Darling, I suffer very deeply. Please help. Please tell me what happened." The little boy said that during my absence, someone used to come every night. Who is that person? The young father did not do so because he was deeply hurt and he's too proud to ask. And in true love, there is no place for pride. You have made a vow to share your suffering, your happiness with him or with her. And now if you suffer, and if you believe that your suffering is caused by the person you love the most, you have to go and tell him and tell her that you suffer, that you need his or her help, that he or she should explain to you why he has done such a thing to you, he has said such a thing to you. So the obstacle is the pride. And in true love, there should not be any pride. You have to go to the other person and ask for help. The young mother committed the same kind of mistake. She should have come to him and asked for help. "My dear husband, what happened? I suffer very deeply. From the time I come home from the marketplace, you did not look at me anymore. You did not answer my questions. And after the ceremony, you left. Have I done something awful in order to be treated like that? Please help me. Please explain to me why you have behaved like that. You have treated like that to me." She did not say that because she was deeply hurt and she was too proud to ask for help. Communication is no longer possible. The fact is that when you suffer, and if you believe that your suffering has been caused by your beloved one, by the person you love and trust the most, and you suffer much more deeply. And the natural tendency is to punish him, to punish her, by showing that alone you can survive very well. You don't need him, you don't need her. That is the natural tendency. So if the other person come close to you and try to comfort you, you said, leave me alone. You prefer going to your room, close the door and cry. You don't want to go to him or to her to ask for help. And many tragedies have happened because of that. Pride. And that blocks communication. And the couple does not have a chance to help each other removing wrong perceptions. So the practice is we should keep communication alive, even if suffering is there in us or in the other person. We should talk to each other. We should listen to each other. Darling, I know that there's a lot of suffering in you. I know. And I don't want to make you suffer. And I would like to know about your suffering, your difficulties. Please help me, because I really want to love you and make you happy. Please tell me. In fact, love is made of a substance called understanding. If you don't understand someone, how can you love him or her and make him or her happy? When a father does not understand the suffering and the difficulty of his son, he is not capable of making his son happy. And when the daughter does not understand the mother, the difficulties and the suffering of the mother, she continues to make her mother suffer. And that is why understanding someone is very crucial, so that you can love and make that someone happy. So what we can do is to go to our beloved one and ask this question: darling, do you think that I understand you enough? I want to understand you, especially your difficulties, your suffering. In the past, I might have reacted with anger, challenging you, defying you, because I did not understand your difficulties and your suffering. I don't want you to suffer. So please help me. Please tell me about your suffering, your difficulties. I'm really eager to learn, because I do care for you. Please help me. And this is kind of talking is called loving speech, right speech, gentle speech. It's very important to restore communication. And when you listen, when you ask such a question, the other person will open his heart or her heart to tell you. And you will practice deep listening. The practice of deep listening is very important to help restore communication. Deep listening is the practice of listening with the purpose of helping the other person to suffer less. The other person has a lot of suffering, difficulties. And until now, no one has been able to listen to him or her and understand him or her. Now you are the one who practice deep listening. You are going to make him or her suffer less. That person will feel understood for the first time. And this practice requires some training. Because if you don't remember that listening like that, you have only one purpose, helping him or her to empty their heart and suffer less. If you don't remember that, you might interrupt him or her. Or you might allow the seed of irritation and anger in you to be water, and you lose your capacity of deep listening. You can practice deep listening only when you know how to keep the energy of compassion alive during the time of listening. Because while the other person is telling you things, you risk the seed of irritation, anger in you, risk to be watered. Because his speech or her speech might be full of wrong perception, misunderstanding, bitterness, blames, and that will touch the seed of anger and irritation in you. And when you are irritated, you are angry, you don't have that capacity of listening anymore. And that is why it's very important to practice mindful breathing in and out, and remember one thing. Listening like this, I have only one purpose, to allow him or her to suffer less. Keep your compassion alive. And even if there is a lot of accusation, blaming, bitterness, wrong perception, you still continue to listen. You tell yourself that later on, tomorrow, after tomorrow, or 3 days, in 3 days, you have a chance to offer him or her some information so that he or she can correct her perceptions. Because suffering are born from wrong perceptions. If we correct our perceptions, and then suffering, anger will vanish. So you are not in a hurry. You tell yourself that it's time now to listen. I should not interrupt her. I should not interrupt him. I should allow him to speak out. And I have to listen with 100% of my attention. And 1 hour of listening like that can bring a lot of relief. The quality of listening is very important. And in my experience, if you cannot listen to your own suffering, your own difficulties, you cannot listen to the suffering and difficulties of another person. And most of us in this society are so busy. We don't have the time to listen to our own suffering. Our own suffering might be very deep, and yet we have no time in order to listen to our own suffering and understand and recognize that there is suffering in us. We pretend that there is no suffering, there's no problem in ourselves. The problem is in the other person. But in fact, there are blocks of pain and sorrow and fear and anger in us. We have not had a chance to listen to our own suffering. If we listen to ourselves with compassion, we will come to that insight about the roots, about the cause, about the nature of our own suffering. And we'll feel much better after listening to our own suffering. And with the practice recommended by the Buddha, releasing the tension in the body, holding our painful feelings and emotions, understanding them will bring a relief. You have more peace, you have more joy, you have more freshness, and then you will be in a situation to help the other person. Before that, it's very difficult to help change the other person. Is the foundation for the love offer to another person. If you are not capable of taking care of yourself, of loving yourself, and then it would be very difficult to take care and to love another person. The greatest obstacle that we encounter today is that most of us are too busy. We don't have the time to go back and take care of ourselves. How can we help our beloved one? In each one of us there is the seed of joy, of peace, of happiness, of forgiveness. And these seeds are left alone for a long time. No one has care to water and to help these seeds to grow. Instead, we water the other kind of seeds, the seed of anger, irritation, fear, despair. And that is why suffering is growing every day. So if we have the time, you can go to our beloved one and say something like this: darling, you have wonderful seeds in you. You have the seed of wisdom, of talent, of joy, of forgiveness, of compassion. And I vow from now on to water these seeds every day. And I vow that from now on I will not water the seed of irritation, anger, jealousy, fear in you. Because I know that if I do, you will suffer. And if you suffer, there is no way that I can be happy. So in Buddhist psychology, we speak of consciousness in terms of seeds. There are many kinds of seeds in our consciousness. When I was a young monk, I had to learn by heart the 51 categories of seed. Mindfulness is one of the good seeds. Mindfulness, concentration, insight, forgiveness, non-discrimination. We have many good seeds in us, everyone. But all of us have negative seeds, the seeds of fear, discrimination, anger, despair, and so on. So we can tell him, we can tell her, darling, if you really care for me, if you love me, please don't water the negative seeds in me. You know, if every time you water the seed of jealousy or fear of anger in me, I suffer. And if I suffer, you might have to suffer also. So please don't. And please do water the seed of joy, peace, forgiveness, happiness in me. Because if I am happy, well, I will not make you suffer. And I promise to do the same. From now on, I will refrain from watering the negative seed in you. I don't want you to suffer. That is why I am determined not to water these seeds. And I make the vow to water the seed of joy, peace, compassion, happiness in you every day. And the practice is described as the practice of selective watering. You water only the good seeds in you and in the other person. You refrain from watering the negative seeds. And if we practice for a few days, the situation can change already, provided that we have the time. We have to identify these seeds in us and in the person we love, and with intention, willingness, love. A few days of practice of flower watering, it can bring a lot of happiness. Even 1 hour of practice can already make a big difference. I remember one time when I gave a teaching about selective watering. That was on Vesak, the birthday of the Buddha. There was a lady in the audience who cried from the beginning of the Dhamma talk. And after the talk, I went to her husband, and I told him, it seems that your flower needs some watering. He understood right away. You understand the practice. You can practice, but you need someone to remind you to practice. That is why the Sangha is very helpful. I just told him just one sentence. And on that day, after lunch, he drove home to Bogdo. It takes only 1 hour. And during the time of driving home, he practiced flower watering. And when they arrived home, she was completely different, blooming like a flower. And the children were very surprised. The practice of selective watering is very effective. It's easy enough. 1 hour of practice can already change a lot. The practice of mindfulness helps us to cherish every moment of being together. Suppose at dinner you notice that your wife has prepared a very good dish, and you enjoy very much. So it's very easy for you to look at her and say, how many people in this world can make such a wonderful dish? I am so lucky. Saying something like that is to water the seed of talent, of love in the other person, and happiness can be obtained right away. You don't need money, you don't need power or anything in order to be happy. You need to be mindful in order to be able to acknowledge, to treasure what is there. And looking in the person of your beloved one, you see many qualities. You see many talents. You have to acknowledge them. You are not trying to please. You are just telling the truth about him or her. Darling, without you, how could I be able to do what I have been doing? And that is the truth. So mindfulness helps us to recognize these virtues, these talents in the other person, for us to recognize them, to treasure them. And this is part of the practice, flower watering. Every one of us has flowers and trash, garbage. The practice is to water only the flower, not the garbage. The garbage is the negative seeds, anger, fear. And according to the teaching, our mental formations are of an organic nature. Love and hate are also organic. Because if you don't know how to take care of your love and feed your love properly, your love may turn into hate. Your love is organic. And if you have not practiced, suffering has been installed there. You are not afraid. With your practice, you can turn the garbage back into flower. You can turn hate back into love. This is possible. The fact is that when you look at the flower, and deeply, you can see the garbage in it, the compost. If you are not a practitioner of meditation, you need to wait for 10 days and the flower will become a piece of garbage. But if you are a practitioner, you don't need 10 days. You look at the flower, you can see the garbage inside. A flower is made of many non-flower elements, including the compost, the garbage. And when you look at the hippocompost, you can see future flowers. And if you are an organic gardener, you don't throw away the garbage. You know how to use the garbage in order to make compost. And when we know the practice, we can, when we are a good organic gardener, we can always turn garbage into compost in order to nourish flowers. Misunderstanding, fear, anger, if we know how to handle them, we may turn them back into love, joy, and peace. And that is why we say that in the teaching of the Buddha, every mental formation is of an organic nature. You don't have to despair, because if you have not been careful in the past, there is already some anger, some hate, some despair. And if you know the practice, you can turn them back into joy, into love, into happiness again. And flower watering, selective watering, that practice is one of the ways in order to restore love, happiness. Many people come to our practice center in France as families. And many couples like to sign the love treaty, the peace treaty, in the presence of a large Sangha. They bring the treaty home, and the treaty shows them how to practice flower watering, selective watering, and beginning anew. The practice of beginning anew. Every week we should spend time together in order to practice watering the flowers in each of us. You recognize the good things in the other person. And by doing so, you help these positive things to grow in him or in her. And if you have suffered a little bit during the past week, you can tell him or her. You have to tell him or her that you have suffered because the other person has said something or has done something that makes you suffer. And that is the second thing you do. The first thing you do is the practice of watering flowers. The second thing to do is to share your suffering and ask for help. And if you know how to listen, you might find out that your suffering has been caused by your wrong perceptions. The other person has had no intention to make you suffer like that. But in case that person had been unskillful or unmindful, and she will have a chance to apologize. And the mental formation that you have got, namely irritation and anger, will be transform. Because if you don't practice like that every week, the suffering, the misunderstanding, the mental formation will grow. And one day it's too important for you to transform. So that is why every week we should practice beginning anew. First of all, we water the good seeds. We recognize the good things. And then secondly, we share our suffering and we ask for help. And in a relationship, if the couple diligently practice this, and then they are safe, and they can always keep their communication alive, and they will continue to help each other, removing wrong perceptions. I think as a householder, as a father or a mother, we should have the time to sit with our children, with our spouse, in order to inquire about their happiness, their suffering. Instead of turning on the television, we should practice breathing in and out, smile at the other person in order to, and inquire about him or her. My son, I know you must have some difficulties and suffering. I'm very eager to learn about that. Please tell me. And then if you have the time, if you are really eager to listen, your son will tell you. And then you know exactly what to do and what not to do in order to make your son suffer less, to be happy. And the son can do the same thing with the father. Daddy, I know that it's difficult for you. You must have difficulties. You must have some suffering. Although I'm busy, but I have the time to listen to you. Father, please tell me. So you should have the time for each other. And if you are a leader of a corporation, that is the same way that you practice. You have to take care of your team. You have to inquire about the difficulties and the suffering. You have to be able to listen to their suffering. And you have a good team. And you succeed more in your corporation. And the workers in your corporation, every one of them has difficulties and sufferings. And as a good director, a good leader in business, you should arrange so that you can inquire about their well-being, their difficulties. And your time of doing that will help your business to grow. Will bring success more to your business. This morning we had a chance to share some of the practice of deep listening with the members of the Parliament. And I have said this. Distinguished members of the Parliament, we have been elected by our people in order to listen to each other and to listen to the suffering and difficulties of our nation. So we should cultivate our capacity of listening. If we don't know how to listen to our own suffering and difficulties, and then we will not be able to listen to the difficulties and suffering of our colleagues. And if we have a lot of anger, of suspicion, of fear here in our head, and then we are not capable of to listen to other colleagues. Every one of us has our own experiences, has our own insight. And if we have that capacity of listening, and then we can learn from everyone in the parliament. And if we know how to listen to each other and to talk to each other in such a way that we can convey, share our experience and our insight, and then the collective insight of the parliament will be great. And with that collective insight and compassion, we can do much in order to help our country, our people. Even if we have different views and ideas, and that does not prevent us to be a harmonious house of parliament, because we can learn very well from each other. And if we don't listen, we are not capable of listening to each other in the Congress, in the parliament, how can we listen to the suffering of the people in our country? So the practice of deep listening is very important. And I propose that the Congress, the Parliament use a bell of mindfulness. Every time the atmosphere becomes very hot and nobody is listening to anybody else, and then the chairperson may invite the bell to sound, and every member of the Congress will practice mindful breathing and smiling so that they can restore the calm, the serenity in the house. And that is for the whole nation. The whole nation will benefit from this kind of practice. So the practice of deep listening, loving speech, is very crucial in restoring communication. Not only in the context of family, but also in the context of the workplace, in the town, the town hall, in the parliament, in the government. And if we know how to listen to each other and to use loving speech in order to share our insight and to help the other people to understand our situation, and then we can help each other remove wrong perceptions. And I propose to members of the parliament to organize sessions of deep listening. There are those in society who believe that they are victims of social injustice, social discriminations. And so far, no one has listened to them. They don't feel understood by their leaders or by other people. So we may like to organize sessions of deep listening and invite them to come over. Please come and tell us about your suffering, your difficulties. We want to listen because you represent the nation also. You tell us about the suffering that you have undergone. We have people in the Congress, in the government, who have the capacity of sitting down and listen to you. And we are inviting other people in the nation, people who have great compassion, calm, and insight. We invite them to come and sit down and help us listening to you. And Congress, the Parliament can organize 5, 10 sessions of deep listening to us, like that. And the quality of listening should be good. We are truly listening. We know how to calm down, how to handle the fear, the emotion, the anger. We can listen deeply and with compassion. And this will need some preparation. And we who practice that for a long time, we can come and help, to help people relax, calm down, holding their fear, their anger, and so on. So after 4-5 days, the quality of our listening will be deeper. And sessions of deep listening like that can be televised so that the whole nation can follow. And if people feel that they are listened to, they are now understood by their leaders and others, and then the level of violence and anger and fear will go down, go down, go down. And I said that India has a very deep spiritual heritage. Now the country suffer, the world suffer. We can go back to our spiritual heritage and make good use of that spiritual strength in order to restore peace, brotherhood, harmony in the country, and help the world to do the same. And the practice of compassionate listening and gentle speech are the only way to help remove wrong perceptions, bring the level of violence and hate and fear down, and restore harmony, brotherhood, and sisterhood. This morning, many members of the Parliament have asked very good questions on this topic of listening. I'm very glad to have had the opportunity to share our practice, our experience with members of the Parliament. I believe that tomorrow we'll have a very happy day practicing together the whole day, and also the day after tomorrow.
Thai leaves, if you could just stay in the hall for a few minutes for a few announcements. Thank you. Thank you.
this training is not necessarily about a prohibition, it's about an awareness, it's also about, that is very important, because we become more realized in the relationship, conscious relationship to things. And this has been my, well, the 5 trainings are like, say, the sun. So the sun is always shining, and the 5 trainings are like the sun shining. Give us the opportunity to find the others ourselves in the present. And then to be also relaxed. We try to not give you what our practice may be. So after that, one of our friends here was. You can come closer. She can take her chair. There's no problem. He talks about India. And the last training, the 5th training, we got Brother Faktan. And myself as Brother Fakshan, or Brother Michael. So I will.
Dear Dhamma brothers and sisters, I feel the 5 trainings are one of the best gifts we can take away for ourselves from retreat. And they're a path of practice, they're the door to awakening. And they're like railings as you walk along a bridge, so that if you want to hold on to something, you don't fall off the bridge into the abyss. But I thought I would share a little bit about what is the refuge. The refuge is really somewhere where you feel comfortable, somewhere where you feel safe. Part of the ceremony is actually taking refuge in the what's called the triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And I want to share a bit how I experienced those three jewels, and we often repeat, if people are historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, the one who is our own ancestor, Indian ancestor, our spiritual ancestor and our land ancestor, and taking refuge in him as a teacher. Buddha was very much a human being, and I look at that in that context, not the God. So he showed me a way in this life, a way which he found. The Anapanasati Sutra, the Sutra, awareness of breathing, through that awareness of body, of feelings. So using that as a practice, but not just the sutras by the Buddha, but the other very, very many teachers, of course. Like somewhere where you recognize something which is yourself. And then the Sangha. The Sangha of the Buddha was always Bhikshunis, the Upasaka and Upasaka. He always said that you can't have the house with just 2 pillars, you have to have 4 pillars. Past the discrimination of nationality or sect. It's not just the Dhamma and Sangha in a second form. I look at that as very much we're trying to emphasize here to practice and to know. So I think touching that with nature in ourselves. And again, the Dharma again is our own practice. All that we are being offered by the teachers here, by Thai and others, and by the Buddha and other teachers, is a path of concentration by mindful walking, mindful breathing. You find at that point when pulling the trigger, there's a marksman not shooting at animals. Then you will automatically start finding that your concentration is developed to a great extent, and that's why we're doing it. I think, but going beyond that, realizing really that, as we talked about today, the interdependent nature of reality, realizing that in yourself